Well, it means mostly that you can choose to do what you want. So you're only competing against 10 other people as opposed to 20 other people. No, I mean, and you get to see a lot more. So you can get a lot more personal attention if should you choose. So really think about what you want in the class, in the next 2 days. We have an unusual situation in terms of we actually have the possibility of a lot more patients should we want. So we have 4 extra, so we have 3 patients today already and 4 tomorrow already. If we want, we actually have the choice of seeing 4 more, okay? Which is a fair amount, for a weekend to see, that comes to 11 people. So you get more in that sense. So figure out if you want that. I mean, so in the next, hour, an hour and a half, sort of, if you can figure out what you want so that by lunchtime we can call people and tell them, okay, do come or don't come or whatever, okay? And if you want something else, I don't coach basketball, so don't ask me for that, but whatever else that might be useful that you think I could offer, if you ask, I will try, okay? Now, I know you're also totally new, right? Yes. To the style. Okay, so there's 3 of you that are totally new to the style. So I'd like to start with giving some sort of overview first. If that makes sense. So we'll take this part on top. Sorry. And go for the other one.
Probably better is the pattern.
Yeah.
In terms of seeing the screens, did you remove at college?
No.
And you can actually get the screen instead.
Do I?
Okay. Or you can play with it or whatever works. It's no big deal. So this style is very different. Most of us were trained in TCM, right?
Which one?
So you ask 10 questions,
No, that's all
and you
not.
take the pulse, you look at the tongue, and there's something else. There's 4 methods of diagnosis, and I'm missing one of them. One of them is palpation, which basically means pulse. One of them is observation, which means mostly tongue, the face and stuff. One of them is asking, and there's another method that I forgot. Sorry, listening. You have to listen. You have to listen to the answers. Don't just ask questions. Listen to the answers. This is quite a bit, and then the TCM idea. So you did your diagnosis and you formulated a strategy of treatment, and then you implement this strategy in whatever manner. So you say, my strategy is to fortify the spleen and disperse dampness. I don't know, something like that. So you do, spleen 3 to tonify the spleen and stomach 40 to disperse the dampness. And oh, what a beautiful combination of, it's the source point and the low point. And, we have all sorts of ways to look at why we choose points in the TCM world. None of it is necessarily wrong or right or anything. It's just, it just isn't what I do. Now, I use some of the same things. Oh, it's the source point. Oh, it's the blah, blah point. I do a lot of more interesting things with points, and especially with point names. Kind of interesting. Okay? But my method is different. What I do is I look at the medical history as and this is, by the way, interesting, because often people are asked if they are asked, what is this style about? And I could be considered, if you like, a branch of the Kiiko Matsumoto style. And if you say that to some of the people in the Kiiko Matsumoto world, they will get very upset at you, because I am not part of that official world. And that's totally fine. But I am a branch of that world, whether I like it or whether they like it. It's a fact. There's nothing anyone can do about it. This is where I've gotten my basic training, was through Kiiko. Okay? I've had a lot of other teachers as well, and my other basic teacher, where I could say was my basic root, was Jeffrey Yuen. Okay? So, a lot of people will define this style as you poke abdomen, you palpate the abdomen, or the neck, or the back, but you palpate, and then you resolve the pressure pain. And that the abdomen dictates what you do is kind of like the implication. I'm very much against that idea. Okay? The abdomen is a confirmatory situation. Okay? So what I believe, my understanding of what I do is I take the medical history and I look at, a person comes and they say, I have a complaint, it's neck pain, it's ear pain, it's whatever, it's digestive issue, whatever the complaint is, there is a chief complaint. But my main diagnostic tool is to look at what happened to them in their lives and see what are their vulnerabilities, where are they vulnerable. And when I'm hoping that if I can address that vulnerability, then the main problem will either disappear on its own or start weakening. Okay? This is very different. In TCM, most people do not ask about medical history. It's very interesting. And when people come from the TCM world, with a patient, and I say, what's their medical history of this patient? The practitioner has no clue often, what kind of surgeries they had. I mean, they often don't know because it's never been emphasized to look at the medical history. What's emphasized, and you see that, for example, in today's world, because of Facebook and stuff, we see, people asking questions and people answering questions, or about cases, and people say, you just treat the pattern. It's like, yes, you should treat the pattern. I agree. But you should also treat if somebody says, well, the patient has Meniere's. Well, Meniere's is a Western term. Only treat Chinese. No. We can't be that, in my opinion, we can't be that dogmatic because let's say you treated the pattern and it didn't work. I'm sure it's happened to you. You treated their liver cheese stagnation until you're stagnated like hell and nothing's moved for the patient or for you. And what do you do now? So you have to be a little bit more flexible in introducing other things besides the pattern. Okay? So I'm looking at the medical history, and when the patient comes in, I'm already going, what they wrote it down, I'm going, there's thyroid issues, there's cardiac issues, they fell on their tailbone. Whatever it is, I'm looking and saying, I wonder if that's related to the current problem. Do I need to clear it? So I've already, when I'm looking at the medical history, I'm already, quote unquote, making up my mind what I might do. And that's the big thing. Nothing is fixed until it proves itself on the patient. This is where the palpatory come in. Okay? So I know the medical history, now I'm poking their abdomen, their neck, their back. Now, there are people who will have no medical history, so the first stage was useless. There are people who come, they can be 40, 50 years old and honestly nothing. Okay, that really does happen. So they didn't help. There are also people who come in and you palpate everything, and I used to say if you palpate the neck, you will find something. There are a few people out there that really doesn't work either. But for the most part, most people will have some palpatory findings. There may be very few. Now this is where it's confusing. The beginner says, too many findings in the abdomen. I can't handle it, it's too much. It gives me too many ideas. That's why I'm saying, go to the medical history, don't let the abdomen dictate to you. Okay? Because the abdomen can have many things, it did not tell you what's primary. The medical history will tell you much more clearly what's primary. Because if something is inherited or something happened earlier, it has a higher chance of being primary. Okay? So you gather your abdominal findings. The more abdominal findings, the better. Why? Because you have more confirmations. So this is where I have a big difference with some of the people who do the same style. So we have this thing, we say adrenal is if you have pressure pain just below kidney 16 in the navel. We call that adrenal sign. The treatment for that is kidney 6, kidney 27, and I have zillions of protocols all over the place. You can flood yourself with protocols, on my website, and it will take you a few months, but you will learn them all. It's not a problem it's a drag to learn protocols, but you kind of have to if you want to do a style. What I'm saying is that does not dictate that it says that the person is likely to have adrenal signs, an adrenal constitution, but it doesn't mean it's primary for them. And how do I know what's primary? supposedly from the medical history, but primarily when I'm using a protocol, say I use kidney 6 and kidney 27, and wow, the whole abdomen, the whole neck, everything clears. I'm going, yes, that's primary. Okay, so if it clears things, if kidney 6 and kidney 27 clears below kidney 16 pressure pain, that does not mean anything on that patient. That just means that the standard protocol worked on this person exactly as you expected. Okay, it's supposed to do that, but if now clears red 17 and it clears, the scalenes and it clears, it clears a whole bunch of other things, then you're going, wow, it's a good point. If, on the other hand, the protocol you're using, you found something, adrenal sign, you clear the adrenal sign with adrenal treatment, but nothing else cleared, what does it tell you?
It's not a primary.
Yeah, that they have there's an adrenal issue, but it's not the main thing here. It's not really, something else is the biggest contributing factor. So in the 90s, Oketsu was the big deal in this world. And so Oketsu shows a left stomach 26-27. It's supposed to reflect to some extent the liver, which is on the right side, because the portal vein goes from the liver, from the left side, from the small intestine towards the liver on the right side. And when the liver, which is supposed to be like a sponge, absorbing all this blood, right? The liver stores the blood. The Chinese did not invent that. The liver holds a lot of blood. It's a fact. This is not a Chinese metaphor. Okay, that's a reality. The portal vein goes towards, if the liver is quote-unquote stuck, then the portal vein will start showing that stagnation further down the road, which will be on the left side. Okay? So the fact that the blood is not flowing smoothly, which you can call blood stagnation, the problem is the blood stagnation in TCM means something a little bit different, but it means the blood is slow in moving. It's a little stuck. When you heat things up, even at the beginning they look like they're moving faster, but then they coagulate, so they get slow. So if people who've had a lot of fevers, for example, might show this. A lot of bruising, a lot of operations, the blood stops moving smoothly. It's important to make sure the blood moves more smoothly. We used to say, okay, it shows left stomach 26-27, we use left liver 4, left lung 5 to clear it. So I had a student who said, Avi, I can do large intestine 4, liver 3, and clear Oketsu. And I'm like a bull with a red blanket. Liver 3, large intestine 4, I can't believe you would use this. It's like, this is like, there's workhorses. It's like, in TCM, it's like, it's stomach 36, pericardium 6, spleen 6, large intestine 4, liver 3, and maybe there's probably a few others that I forgot about. And it's kind of like, it gets to be boring. Of course, I have my own workhorses, but, it's like, oh God, not large intestine 4, liver 3 again, kind of thing, okay? So I was like, okay, I can't believe that you're violating this sacred Oketsu protocol. How could you do this with this horrible thing? So I said, okay, let's see, So we put a patient on, and I don't remember, this was over 20 years ago, but it's like, let's say the patient had red 17 and whatever, but they had Oketsu. And my student goes and she does large intestine 4, liver 3, Oketsu clears, but nothing else clears. Okay, so I'm going, okay, let's take these out. Now we do liver 4, lung 5, and now everything else clears. Okay, so you want to look at the protocols that do the best, the most, and you also want to choose so when you say this is the protocol for X, Y, and Z, okay? So maybe 10 years ago you thought this is a fabulous protocol, and over time you went, but I have better points that seem to do a better job. That's perfectly valid. Just because acupuncture is 2,000 years old or however long it is, doesn't mean that in the last, say, 50 years, when the communication systems are so much better, we're actually not progressing that much faster than the people in the Han Dynasty. Okay, it has to be like that. Because if it isn't, we're stuck. We're stuck in something that's, it's all very nice to say, this is a 2,000-year-old medicine, but how many people really want 2,000-year-old medicine? They want nowadays medicine, but with something that has a larger perspective. Okay? My understanding is Chinese medicine is a philosophical medicine. It's not that you have to talk about dampness. You don't have to talk about yin and yang if you don't want to. You can do what you want with it. Your parameters are how you describe Chinese medicine, not how it's described in a particular textbook. Okay, so it's up to you to figure that out. So my understanding of Chinese medicine, yeah, I mean, the yin-yang was a bit of an exaggeration, and you don't have to talk about yin-yang. I think that ultimately we'll come into it. But you can diversify, and you can talk about thyroid conditions. You can talk about Crohn's. It's just because they didn't name something Crohn's, 2,000 years ago or 300 years ago, but you have it. It's just like, Shanhan Long and Wenbing school, it's another development. Nobody says, oh, the Wenbing, but Wenbing came thousands of years after Shanhan, well, at least 1,500 as far as I know. So it takes time for things to develop, and nowadays things develop so much faster because people get ideas from all sorts of continents. We have so much more ability to talk about patients and stuff. Okay, so I gathered the palpatory findings, and now I'm correlating what I found in the body and what the patient said their history is. Okay, palpatory findings do include pulse, by the way. But my pulse diagnosis is not terribly complex, okay? And I can't teach it. So to teach pulse diagnosis is a whole different ballgame. So yes, I do take some ideas from the pulse. And now I'm saying, okay, the person this is the main complaint, that's the symptoms. This is what they come with a history. So these are the things I think could happen. The body seems to confirm, oh yeah, I can, they say they have, they do have thyroid. I can poke it, or, there's pressure pain where I would expect thyroid to reflect around stomach 9, let's say, or below, or something in the throat. Let's say they have some hormonal issue, and I can say, oh yeah, there is pressure pain on, say UB2 could be, or the occiput could be a hormonal reflex. Maybe they have pressure pain on UB32, maybe on small intestine 13 they have pressure pain. So I get confirmation for, oh, this medical history part still reflects in the body. Or I may have findings that are not from the medical history. They have other pressure pains. That when you poke, you discover other things. So now I'm saying, okay, what is my strategy? I start with saying, I correlated and I prioritized, okay? I'm saying, what is the strategy that I want to apply here? And then what I do is I test it. And I test to see how effective this strategy is in clearing the abdomen. Why? It doesn't mean the symptoms will go away. It might. Now, if they come for shoulder pain, easy enough. How's your shoulder? But if they come for insomnia, it's not easy at all because, as you well know, most patients with insomnia sleep on your table. Okay, it's just the nature of, you can't rely, an internal disorder, or if you have the menstrual issue, okay, you can't, be sure that you solved it. But by checking the abdominal signs, that the abdomen got better, or the neck got better, or whatever, you're getting confidence that you're moving in the right direction. Now, I will tell you this, there are many ways to clear the abdomen completely. Okay? They're not all the same. They're not all as effective. And you're not going to know until the second treatment. In other words, the patient comes in, you cleared the abdomen, let's say they came for shoulder pain, just for the sake of it. The shoulder is better. And yes, the next time, they say, wow, I love this is amazing. And you tell them, well, come back next week just to make sure, because you've had it for whatever, 3 years, let's just, So they come next week and they say, it was great for a day and then it all came back. That's not a good treatment, in my opinion, okay? What you want is I would rather have them say it's 80% better at the end of the first treatment and it stays at say 75 or 70 or even 60, but it doesn't go below half. Then you're in the right strategy. Now, If it's 100% better at the first treatment and stays there, fabulous. It's not like you had the wrong strategy. But 100% goes down to 0% is not, or 20% is not the strategy. Okay? It looked good. Okay? Looking good is not the point. Okay? So it's really important that the second treatment you reevaluate if need be. And often you do need to, because yeah, you did what you could by making sure all abdominal signs and symptoms all clear, but it doesn't mean that it will stay that way. You could have missed something. And this is why I always treat front and back. Because it's possible that on the back you will find something again, and if you didn't address it, it will hold the patient back. So that's why for me treating front and back is essential. For other people it isn't. A lot of people just treat one side. That's like the standard in TCM. You decide which side you treat and you do that. I feel that it's very important to treat both sides, just in case there's something to be found on the back. Okay, that will help. That will help. So that's the general kind of mechanics of what I do. Now, there are maps for the abdomen that say this area means this, this area means this area means this, so it gives you ideas and then it kind of dictates protocols that you could try. Okay, so that's basically kind of what this style is about. And so just looking a little bit more deeply into it. So in the medical history, you're trying to look at things chronologically. So what I do is I ask patients to just write for me the age and name the problem. I don't want to hear too much about it. I just, I don't care if they can spell the problem, it doesn't matter. Just name the problem. I can discuss it with them, if I want. And that includes things that are inherited or, from birth, okay? You're prioritizing things. The older something is, the more likely, not for sure, it is to be important. You're always looking for the so-called first injury with the idea is, if you're lucky, if the patient is easygoing, when you knock off the first injury, it doesn't matter if there's 500 other things and the case is very, very complex. When you knock that first thing, it's like the domino effect, everything else topples down. Okay? That's your ideal situation. Okay? How many patients come like that? Some do, some... No, I mean, some do, some don't, and some you thought you got the right domino, and then you're kind of like, not really. So that's why you have to keep testing. This is not a style, in my understanding, where you decide something and you do it. This is a style that you're constantly, dynamically retrying. So you didn't work, no problem. Don't get excited. There is another chance. There's always another chance to try and try and try again. Okay? When you're selecting points, when I'm pressing a point to see if abdomen cleared, it didn't clear. Okay, it's just one idea. Move on to the next one. The problem is what happens when you run out of ideas. That's where it gets annoying. It's easy when you have 2 or 3 ideas and you go, okay, first idea didn't work, I'll try the second one. Yeah, I have another patient in the other room, but fine, I'll try another idea on you, I'll do you a favor, instead of just sticking needles. It takes a little longer. But then at some point, with some patients, you will run out of ideas. And you have to accept that will be, and this is what this class is about. What happens when you run out of ideas? How do you generate ideas? Okay? Because that's really, there's a limit to how many protocols you have in your background. The most brilliant person in the world, no matter what kind of computer mind you have, will run out of existing protocols to use. Oh, Professor such and such said this, blah blah said this one, blah, blah, blah. And you try it all, and at some point you have to get creative. And this is what I'm hoping this class is really about. How do we find our own creativity so we are not restricted? It doesn't mean we can treat everything, because no one can treat everything. It does not exist. I have a friend, he works in a hospital, and he sees like 15 patients a day. Okay, so he sees a fair amount of people in a week. He doesn't, there are people who see 100 patients a day, granted, but those are way unusual. But 15 is a decent amount, it's a fair amount of people that you see, and maybe it's more even, but, and he says, oh, all my patients, they all get better. Impossible. I mean, it's just not, there's no such thing as all your patients get better. One has to accept that we all fail, and it's not a failure, it's just the nature of the business. You know, because if medicine was so clear that you can just, you know, you can just do opposite arm, yang leg, yang on the leg, yin on the arm, or something like that, you know, like you could just balance, then, you know, then all these arguments that we should get paid better by the insurance companies and all that kind of stuff is rubbish, because if you just balance and it's so simple, why should I pay you more than £1 for a treatment? You know, it's very simple, you just balance. The whole point is it's not simple. You know, what looks like balance is not balanced. You know, I mean, you know, so this is what happens when the regular tricks don't work, is where it gets interesting. There are plenty of people where the regular tricks work. This is why people can afford to have 100 patients a day, because X amount of these people will get better through the standard protocols. You don't have to do a lot of thinking, because if you see a lot of people, you can't think a lot. You know, you can't think for each person. You know, it takes time. Okay, so I want to be very clear. What I'm teaching here for this class is not conducive for a super busy clinic. Okay, this is appropriate for anywhere up to 12, maybe 15 patients a day. You're not going to do it. Once you go past that, you will not be able to. You really have to just apply the protocols as they are. And that's fine, because enough people will get better. That's totally appropriate. Okay? So you're looking to see if what's most significant. I mean, if somebody says, you know, I cut my little finger when I was 5, and they decide that's important enough to put it on the form, well, maybe it's important to them, but you're kind of going, that versus, and by the way, you have ulcerative colitis since you were 3 years old. I think ulcerative colitis takes precedence for me. Then we'll see. Oh, well, maybe this. Oh, wow, it's on small intestine too. Maybe it's worth looking at. Okay, maybe there is something there. But you're looking what's really significant, and you're looking to see what is the root. Okay, so the root is going to be, if you find one, is going to be the idea through which you arrived at a point. Okay, the root is. I'm saying the root is autoimmune. When I press on REN4, which is my autoimmune treatment point, I press on REN4, everything disappears. That was a really bad example, because REN4 is on the abdomen, so it doesn't work so well. So, but you get what I mean. The root is not what you thought, but what proves itself on the body. And beware that may look one way today, and next week you'll go, but it didn't stay. If it doesn't hold, it's not the root. You're missing something. Now, you may have gotten the right root, and the person may have multiple roots. And so you missed a root. So always look for other roots. When you palpate, now this is a mistake that a lot of people make. They find one thing in the abdomen, and they run to fix it. Okay? It's natural. You know, I found this, I want to fix it, right? It's like, especially the beginner, you know, because it's exciting. Oh, I know how to fix that. You know, it's like, oh, I know. They have adrenal, they have oketsu, they have, you know, something. I know what that means, and I want to prove that I can do it, right? Let go of that, okay? Find the point, find all the abdominal findings, get a general picture first. When you're palpating, you're just noting, okay, left stomach 26, 27, right side stomach 26, 27, under kidney 16, other side under kidney 16, REN 9, REN 12, REN 15, under the ribs on the right side. Just take the general picture. Don't evaluate. Don't even name it yet. Now, naturally, as you will name it automatically as you've done it a few times, but just get the picture. Why? Because you want to then correlate it with a medical history and decide what's important. If you find one thing on the abdomen and you haven't looked at everything else, now you run the risk of just clearing that one thing and not clearing everything else. So you lost your ability to prioritize. Okay? So this prioritization, which means depending on how good the point clears the abdomen, the neck, the back, etc. Okay? So that's really important. Also palpate the abdomen as well as the neck and the throat. It's harder to palpate the back when they're lying face up. I always start people face up. It's very rare, it happens maybe once a year, that I will actually flip someone over first. Not because they have back pain. No, nothing to do with it. Sometimes you tried everything you could on the abdomen and nothing is moving and you figure, okay, maybe there's something on the back that needs to be addressed first and cleared. And then sometimes the abdomen starts showing more. So when the person's face up, it's a little hard to palpate their back and find out what's going on. So you can do some of it, but it's not going to be as precise or useful as it is when they're lying face down. Okay? And you are looking also at channel palpation situations. It's nowhere near, I don't know, I know people who studied with Wang Zhuyi, or friends of mine, but I don't really know the style. And I can't really say what, first of all, their palpation is very different than ours. My palpation is on channels is almost like this, you're just touching. I'm not like really pushing. Abdomen looks a lot more aggressive than it is. In the abdomen, I'm trying to get up to 1 knuckle's worth in, okay? If they say it's uncomfortable when you get up to 1 knuckle in, if you get more than 1 knuckle in, everybody most likely will say painful, okay? And if they don't, that's kind of unusual also. So that might be like, why is it I can get my whole hand in here? What's wrong with you? Okay? But up to 1 knuckle in, I use 3 fingers. I use these 3 fingers to poke, and then I don't use my hand. I'm not doing this, I'm doing this. I'm moving from my leg into the patient. Okay? If you just use your hand, it's painful with everyone. So the palpation of the abdomen looks a little bit more dramatic than it actually is. Okay? Because it looks like whereas the channel palpation looks way lighter than some other people's. Yes?
Can I ask if a patient is quite very overweight,
Yeah.
do you still go a knuckle or
some?
Do you have to go a little bit further?
Depending how much overweight and depending on on other issues, there are some people who are very overweight. You just still below the skin because the idea is this. You're trying to touch the fascia. You're not trying to touch the organs. You're not trying to touch the muscles. Okay, you're seeing what the fascia. These reflections are things that are knots in this is the theory. These are knots in the fascia. Okay, that reflect because fascia. Everything relates, blah 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 blah, and the fascia is the thing that supposedly connects everything. I mean, it's very popular nowadays. Like 20 years ago when I said that, like it was new and exciting and interesting, and nobody agreed. Now it's like suddenly it's like. Yeah, it's all about fascia, right? So, I don't know, but that's my understanding. But if you think about it, let's say the skin is here, and then you have some sort, like the gooey fascia stuff here, and then you have, let's say, some muscle, and then you have some more fascia, and then you get some organs, then you get a spine, and then you get some more fascia, and then you get some skin, okay? Now, if I poke here, no matter how much of the distance here is, okay, this is a really obese person. Like they're huge. Okay, but even if it's here, I'm just doing this so that it's clear. If I'm touching here, let's say the fascia is here. I don't need to touch the fascia with my finger. I just need to create pressure. Even if I'm here, there's already some pressure. Now it's less direct pressure, so some people are very weak. You can go way less than 1 knuckle, they feel everything. And all the reflexes might show as pressure pain. Some don't. It all depends on, in that person, it's just my imagination saying that, how the pumping of the pressure operates, how their system is going. So you can conceivably press up here and all the way down the spine will feel it. You know, and on the other hand, another person, they're very thin, you press the same amount, but even though they have the same thing in the spine, they're not going to feel it just because the method by which pressure is transmitted in their own body is different. So I can't say that every obese person you need to palpate more, but it's conceivable. In other words, yeah, huge person, you can allow yourself to palpate more if you didn't find anything at the regular level. But it's not a must. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Extend that question slightly.
Yeah.
When you do get the people, they lie on the table and their navel then sort of shifts over to here. Does the fascia go with the navel, or do you take a line down the centre and try and find where you think it might be?
No, I'm assuming that everything shifts with the navel. So the Ren line will be shifted, but then, you know, it's problematic. What you can do with some of these people, what usually happens with these people is that they basically went into the table like this, but there are a lot of people who are very large, don't have very good body awareness. It's just the name. I mean, you know, yes, you have some, I mean, granted, there are people who are like enormous, and I mean, you see this like more in films, and you know, and suddenly they're starting to dance like they're Shirley Temple or something, and like, wow, how can you be such an amazing, you know? Yeah, there are people with way better body awareness than very skinny people, or even athletes. But as a whole, as a group, the really obese person tends to not relate to the body very well. You know, I mean, the Chinese will say it's dampness, obstructing or something like that. So therefore, it's not, you know, they shifted because they kind of got on the table like this. So you can possibly help adjust them so that it's a little bit more in line. In other words, it's not just the fascia move. It's the position itself is their problem. Because large or small should still be straight line.
I think what's happened is that several patients have had gastric bands, and then they've lost vast amounts they've got the fat there, it just moves and slides the navel.
That's fat that's basic, I mean, they have kind of quote unquote floating fat.
That's what it feels
Basically,
like.
yeah, that's a whole different ballgame. Yeah, that's not just a person who's large, that's a person who's basically, because the person who's large, everything is still connected and held. These are people who are like, they're on the way. This is fat that's on the way, it's kind of half cut off and half still there, quote unquote. So that's a little different. I would say that I would first check the position, see if you can get it a little bit more straightened out, then yeah, work with what you have. I mean, look, what happens with a person who's like this? You know, where is UB43, for example, UB13? Like, is it in line with a third thoracic vertebrae, blah, blah? Maybe not. And that's totally, so you work with, find what you find and evaluate. That's what I'm saying. Don't even name it when you palpate. Because with a person where it's all crooked, you're finding something, you're tempted to name it, and you're questioning yourself. Is this really right stomach 21 here? Does this reflect, you know, stomach ulcer, or does this reflect, I mean, you just don't know what's what. So it's not worth, yeah, so I found this, I'm going to try and clear it, I think it might be that. So leave yourself very flexible in all of this. You know, does that?
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. And so we talked really about all of this, you know, what is the first injury, what is the most significant aspect of the medical history, in the palpatory finding what hurts the most, okay, or what you feel is most important. I mean, you know, it's like if they show, there's certain findings that are going to be more important than others, okay. Adrenal is a deeper finding. If they have an SCM that's tight, it's going to be important because the SCM controls the vagus nerve, it controls your nervous system. Okay, so it's you know, you can't ignore certain findings. Okay? And now you correlate, you're starting to create a story oh, I think this person, the main thing about this person is this. You know, it's that it's autoimmune, or it's their diabetes, or it's whatever it is, or it's the mother's diabetes. Let's say. If they have diabetes, it's pretty obvious. But if mama has diabetes, it doesn't mean that it's so important to you to treat. But you're starting to get a picture and you say, oh, I think this is going to be the most important thing here. Okay? So then you create a strategy on what needs to happen. And then just remember, the strategy could be wrong. You just made up your mind that this is likely to be the case, but it doesn't mean that it is. So that's when you go to the fourth stage, which is testing it. Did this strategy resolve the abdomen? And now you have to do an evaluation. It doesn't mean it has to fully resolve everything. But if it just resolves the obvious, that may not be the best strategy. Okay? You're always looking for the strategy that knocks off everything. And most people need 2 or 3 different strategies together. It's a combination. It's not one does all. Okay? And if something just clears one finding, it's not as useful. Okay? So now you keep going back to, you know, I made up a story. I figured out my strategy. I tested it. How efficient was it? If it's not as efficient as I want, I go back and reprioritize and reevaluate. And I keep going back and forth between, I already know the medical history, I already know what the abdominal findings are. I only have to test and correlate and test. Make up new stories constantly. And this is where people get stuck. Because making up new stories is not always so simple. Okay, the first one is usually the one that's easiest for you. Okay, that's the nature of it. Okay? Why do you choose a point? Okay, so it's part of a protocol. You found adrenal, and adrenal protocol is kidney 6 and kidney 27. Why? Well, my teacher said so. You know, it's a very obvious one. And then you can say, well, there can be other situations that, you know, that instead of kidney 6, we can use, say, kidney 7, we can use kidney 9. There could be other things we can use. So there are variations on protocols also, but it's still all about the experience that someone has imparted to me. You know, or I have that experience myself, one way or the other, but it's something in the past. Another thing is you're looking at when that no longer gives you what you want. You're looking at what is the location of either the problem, the abdominal finding, the channel, the classification, things like that. What's going to fit your strategy? Okay? So, you know, so Jeffrey Yuen is very famous for this thing of, you know, like looking at the levels of where things are. So you use the, you know, sinew channels for things that are musculoskeletal issues. You use, if the issue relates more to the jing, you use, say, the extra meridians. If, you know, so there's many ways to look at what fits the location or the idea of the problem. And there are many ways to do this. You know, these levels are just one way of looking at it. So that's one thing to do. And one thing that I do a lot is looking at the name, and I start making correlations between the name and other possibilities. Okay? Why? Because I would argue that there are probably a certain amount of points on the body that are named after someone's mistress. Okay? I'm willing to guarantee it. Okay, which ones? I don't know, because I don't know the names of the mistresses. Okay. But I'm not going to say that every point was named incredibly smartly and really usefully. Okay, no. But there is enough of them. There's what? I don't know, I say there's 365, but I only counted 361, so I'm a little confused about what the number is. I believe there's 361 channel points. But if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. But there's over 300 of them, whichever way you count it. Because I think they say 365, like the number of days in the year. And it somehow came a nice number, but somehow I'm missing a few. So, out of all these points, there has to be plenty that have really good reasoning, that someone saw something in that point and left an understanding of what they saw, and it might be useful for this patient. So that's why point names are so important. Okay? Some of them, if you try and do that and you try and force it, it's not going to work, because all you're going to get from that patient is, she's not my mistress. You know, and that's, by the way, could be true for points with very beautiful names that are very meaningful for other people. This point is not my mistress, it ain't going to work and you have to accept it. Find the right mistress, you know, or the right wife, whatever, for the patient. So not every point is going to have significance in its name. The other thing that's nice about point names is you can start, the more you're familiar with them, the more you can start making correlations to other points and to see. And the problem here is in Chinese, the person who reads classical Chinese, not me. Okay, I don't. The person who did could immediately find correlations to other places where that character or part of the character or whatever also exists. So they're immediately making a whole bunch of correlations that we don't have the ability to do, and even modern day Chinese people don't have the ability to do. So that's why, unfortunately for us, it needs a lot of research. Okay? So, we already talked about that. It's not enough, this is really important, it's not enough that a point clears findings in the abdomen. Don't get sucked into that. Okay? It's nice, and it's also very nice for the patient. And what's good about it is it's a great placebo. Okay? If the patient goes out and you now press on a point on the foot, and the person, wow, it's not there. Are you pressing the same? Is it the right place? I mean, they get the picture. Okay? They immediately, not everyone, but most people, because it's so visceral, they start trusting you. You must know what you're doing. Okay? So that's really important, because if they trust you, now they have a much better chance of getting there. If they don't trust you, they have a much less chance of getting there. That's just the reality, you know. So it's good that a point clears, but if it just clears one thing, it's not good enough. It's how much is it clearing, and especially, and this is where it's kind of weird, you want to know all the protocols and have them, you know, ready for use. And then at the same time, what happens is, you want to find it, when you find a point that clears things that have nothing to do with what officially it's supposed to clear, you know it's right. So actually, what you'll see me do is I'll ignore the protocols on purpose, especially at the beginning when I see a patient. Yes, I know you have adrenal. I know I need to clear your SC. I know, like I can give. Believe me, I can give you. Okay, I mean, what do you think I'm doing? You know, for almost 30 years. You know, I know the dogma. Okay, that's not the problem. So then, when I'm finding a point that clears everything and has nothing to do with the dogma, that's when I'm saying, wow, this point is really useful. That's when you know. If a point clears what it's supposed to, it's not as strong for you as when it clears something it wasn't supposed to. Okay? So often I will try, I know below kidney 16 belongs to adrenal, but let me see if my immune point clears it. Because if it does, it doesn't mean I won't do adrenal, but it confirmed to me that the immune issue here is strong, is primary. Okay? It's not that don't do the, so what I do is I test everything before I needle. I needle at the end. I don't test and needle. I test, then I'm saying, okay, now I needle, now I'm testing again. Okay? I know it will make more sense when we see a patient. And finally, there's some priorities here, okay? For me, this is just me, this character Chwai, okay, is there a movement up and down in the body? Because if there isn't, the person's going to look like this. They come in like this, literally. Okay? You see this in Asia, you see this a lot in Southeast Asia, you see people just walking like this. Exaggerating very slightly. Okay? It's really absurd. But you see that in the West also. When they sit, they will sit like this. They're sitting on the buttocks. This is a slight exaggeration, fair enough, okay? They're sitting on the buttocks. Now, you think you should be sitting on the buttocks. Well, I have news for you. You're supposed to sit on your thighs. Your buttocks should be off the chair. some of the buttocks is on the chair, but you're not sitting on the buttocks, you're sitting actually on your thighs. If you're not sitting on your thighs, from here, what do I have to do to get up? It's like, you have to be on your thighs in order to stand up. If you're on your buttocks, you can't. So that type person will tend to sit on, they will also, and this is more typical of women, they'll have their heel, they'll sit like this. Their heels are off the floor. They're not short. I think, it's just that they're not sitting on their thighs, therefore they, and they're holding their heels up. That person has no connection to push down in order to lift up. Okay? So there's a very famous song, "What goes up must go down," right? From the 70s, I believe. I have the opposite motto. What goes down must go up. It can't go up without a push down. So if you want to have space in the body, and the first thing that has to happen in the body there has to be a space, a physical space in the body for the organs to work. Otherwise, everything is congested. Okay? You have to create that space. The character Chwai exists in the channel, in the description of the channels of the spleen, the kidney, and the bladder channels. Okay? And that character, and we'll talk about it in a second also, it shows up, the top part is like a mountain, and the bottom actually means something else nowadays. The left part means a foot. Okay? So the character actually means to stomp, to do this. This is strife. Okay? So it's a little similar to Chow, okay, like Yin Chow, Yang Chow. It's somewhat similar, but it's not the same. Okay? And it clearly shows something pushing down and something growing up. Okay? That exists in the spleen, in the kidney, and the bladder channels very clearly, and the person has to have it. It does not exist so clearly in the arms. So there's no channel that it says, that it chwais. The description in the Ling Shu is that it chwais, the kidney chwais, blah, 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 the bladder. It doesn't say that on any of the other channels, and certainly doesn't say that on the hand channels, but in a way, if you're looking for chwai in the arm, it's going to be in possibly in the lung, but definitely in the pericardium. And I'll show you that very clearly. Why? Because we don't do this. Now you have to, if you are pushing against heaven, which you're supposed to, right? Because you're supposed to push against the earth. The person exists between heaven and earth, right? So if you're handstanding, it will be a little bit more obvious. Okay? So the first thing I evaluate is, are they like this? Or are they sitting up? Are they standing up? Is there space in their body? Okay? Before all your 5 element stuff, the 5 elements cannot exist. The 5 elements are a variation of interactions of yin-yang. So in order to interact between yin and yang, I have to create that interaction. Otherwise, I'm just falling into yin. Which, by the way, becomes more and more and more in our culture, happens more and more and more. Why? Because we're constantly doing this. We're not interacting with the world. We're interacting less and less and less. Notice how much we're not leaving the house. Or, well, we might be leaving the house, but we're not leaving our computers. So we're in a world of our own, which, Eileen and I were talking about it, kind of very briefly, which is why you see this in all the different styles. Everybody's doing more and more skull points. We have to get people to be more yang in order to be alive. It's interesting because we're all like sinking down and closing ourselves off. And this is a really great interaction. Wow, I watched 5 movies on Netflix in the last hour. It's like, no, this binging thing. I don't know. You guys have binging here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. And I'm assuming you've all tried it, at least once.
Binge
I
watching.
did it once.
Binge drink. It's very similar to binge drinking.
No, I'm with it.
Very, very similar. No, listen, I have a rule for myself, 1 episode at a time, never let it go to the next time, because if you do that, my whole mentality is like, I'm now living in some, I'm now a character in Downton Abbey, whatever it is. I'm not Queen Victoria, and I'm totally living this, it's too much. One makes, for me, everybody has their own, maybe for you it's only 10 minutes worth, maybe you can do 2 episodes, and this is what we do, we're just totally stuck in a virtual world. And it is not necessarily criticism, it is what it is. But it creates a situation where we're closing off more and more and more, and we're less and less young, we're less interactive, which is why head points seem to be working so much better. I've been in this business now 29 years, okay? So it's a long enough time to sort of observe, changes. And skull points were never as important, as useful on patients as they are. Everybody's interested in Yamamoto or Chinese or Jew or whatever it is. Everybody's interested, and you see different practitioners starting to introduce more and more head points. They're not calling them skull because they're not unique, but we're using, gallbladder 13, do 24. We're still using skull points. And it's not that ancient Chinese did not recognize it. I mean, look at how many points you have on the head. I mean, just the gallbladder channel already has 20 points on the head. That's a fair amount, plus the bladder, that's another 10. You have a good portion of points that are on the skull. Then you have the sanjiao, and then of course you have the face. So there's plenty there to work with and to do. So we're going to get to a fair amount of points if you look, it's not like a new phenomenon, but it's a phenomenon that seems to be important in today's world. Is to get people to have the young a little bit roused up, get going there, which is where the Chwai also comes into effect. Okay? So then you're looking at the type of person. Okay, so this is where you say, okay, there are a spleen type, there are an adrenal type, there are a liver type, there are an autonomic nervous system types. You're putting them in some sort of box that, I have slightly different boxes than the TCM boxes, okay? And then you're looking at the pathology and the physiology of the patient, that's primarily coming from the medical history. Okay, and this can be either, you can put it in terms of Chinese, you can put it in terms of Western. You're saying, okay, they have they're hypothyroid. That's a type. Okay, you probably need to address it. If they're hypothyroid, it needs to be addressed. Or they have low blood pressure, they need to be addressed. They have high blood pressure, it needs to be addressed. Things like that, these are things that needs to be addressed. Then you're looking at the channel or the location of the problem. Okay? And notice that number 2 and 3, the type of patient, and the pattern, the box that you put them in, could be the same or different. Okay, what do I mean by that? Someone comes and they have very wide buttocks. They're very heavy in the thighs and very thin from the waist up. That's a very obvious spleen. And by the way, and you see that and you go, you love carbs, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, yes, I'm addicted to carbs. It doesn't have to be sugar, carbs, okay? I love pasta, I love bread, a meal without these just does not do anything for me. And then you go spleen type. But, so that's your the second, number 2. But the third one might be different. They'll probably not be digestive, and maybe they're coming for a thyroid issue. So the number 2 and number 3 could be the same diagnosis, or it can be different diagnosis. And both can be valid. Don't make an assumption that, that just because they didn't match. They could be 2 different things. Okay? And finally, these are types. Okay, so that's the third. This is the third thing, the physiology, pathology of the patient, especially even though it says type up at the top. These are things that tend to take priority, okay, and it's very obvious. If they have a blood pressure problem or other circulatory problems, that needs to be addressed first. You can't treat someone who's low blood pressure without addressing the fact that they have low blood pressure. I mean, you can, but I would say 75 to 80% of the time you won't get good results. Why? Because the blood pressure is too low, so nothing's moving. You've got to like get something going in that low blood pressure. You've got to address that, pump it up a little bit. Okay?
Sorry, Abby, to interrupt.
Yes.
Do you, because I think that's really important, I've found that to be more and more important. And I don't take people's blood pressure
I don't either.
routinely, but some people don't know what their blood pressure
Yes,
is.
so-
Do you just use the points to see if they're nice?
Yeah, I mean, so, okay, well, there's a certain type that evokes in you, oh, I've had probably low blood pressure. And if they, well, first of all, you get a confirmation of the note high because the people who are high know. The people who are low often say they don't remember the numbers, or they were told, oh, good,
Yeah.
but what's the number? So you don't have to take it. I mean, if you want to get one of those cuffs, you know, that you get at at the drugstores, that that gives it to you in 3 seconds. They're not very accurate, but fine. But it's not. And then what I do is when I take the pulse, if you have that thin, wiry pulse that disappears on pressure, and they're not high blood pressure, they're quite likely to be low. Okay, so
Listening.
yeah. So sometimes they don't know.
I usually ask them, if you drop something on the floor and you bend to pick it up and stand up, or do you get dizzy or standing up?
Yeah, but that's a more
That's often
extreme. But
And
that's
then they usually say, that's a sign of low pressure, and then that could be low blood pressure. And they say, oh yes. They usually then remember that somebody said to them down the line, you've had low blood pressure. They're on and off the cuff.
But a lot of people with low blood pressure don't have these. That is, to get to that point, your blood pressure has to be below, I believe, below 100/60. So, now, of course, everybody's different. Everybody's, some people have 110/60 and they bend over and get up and get dizzy. But, it's like, that's much more typical of the person who really has relatively extreme low blood pressure. This dizziness.
Also just, I've found a correlation. Almost everybody that's had anxiety has, in the end of the day, said, gets low blood pressure. They seem almost.
Yeah. A lot of the anxiety, a lot of the so-called Schirn disturbances are highly correlated with low blood pressure types. Yes. Not as clearly correlated with a high blood pressure type as we expect. The standard ideology was that, has been that high blood pressure is like, the anxious, kind of person. No, that's not always true. Actually, the low blood pressure types that are much more susceptible to mental emotional state issues, than the high blood pressure types. It's really interesting that some of these. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't high blood pressure types who aren't, like really overly excitable and overly anxious. Yes, they do exist. But especially in today's world, where you see a lot of people sort of like have like this so-called low-level anxiety, but that's constantly disrupting, and constantly holding everything. And that's why you always have to address the nervous system, because if the nervous system is always overly active, nothing else can work. Okay? So that's your next thing. Does the person have an autonomic nervous system that's disruptive? Okay? On the body, you might see it as a tight SCM or a tight neck, but this will be something, you might see it on the pulse again. It's that pulse that's thin, sort of wiry, not in the official wiry, but in the sense that it's stringy. But when you press it might widen or it might disappear altogether. Okay? That's an autonomic nervous system pulse. A person who has thyroid issues, those need to be addressed, always, and that tends to be women. That's not so common for men, because thyroid affects every cell in the body. Okay, and the same thing with diabetes. Okay, and with diabetes, yes, if they have diabetes and the family needs to be addressed. On the other hand, if they themselves say, I have a sugar imbalance, like I'm addicted to sugar, or when I eat sugar or carbs, same thing for me. I get lightheaded, I get fatigued or whatever. That's a sugar imbalanced person. If a person has an autoimmune disorder, that needs to be addressed. And immune issues, in other words, oh, when I was a child, I always had ear infections or nose infection, things like, or I have allergic rhinitis, things like that. Those are things that need to be addressed. And in my experience, women who have fibroids or cysts, that's a primary thing. You can't ignore that. And the same goes for endometriosis. Okay? A lot of women will not mention that they have or had fibroid or cyst. It's very interesting. They'll tell you that, I don't know if this is a phenomenon that exists in this country, but you have a lot of women, they'd say they've had a hysterectomy, nothing else. It's like, but why? Why don't you tell me why they put on the form, age 35 or age 50 or whatever, hysterectomy. It's like, so they answer the question that you asked, right? You asked, what's the medical history? Did you have any surgeries or whatever? So they write it down. And then you say, and this is not uncommon. You will say to them, why did you have the hysterectomy? And they will answer as if they have no clue. It's really odd. So then that's when you have to go, were you bleeding a lot? I mean, they do not know that they had a fibroid. It's really interesting. I don't know why, I don't know where this phenomenon comes from. I think, I'm hoping that it's improved nowadays. I think we're talking about women who've had hysterectomies in the past, usually older women, like sometimes it's not so far in the past, but it's older. I think it's the way the medical establishment treats women. It's very important for you to know why we're taking your uterus out. You just did. You should be happy. It's like, maybe not. So, but these are primary types that, situations that chances are if somebody has one of them, and some of them are, what does it mean you have an autonomic nervous system disorder? That's something you determine because they don't come with a diagnosis. The blood pressure, sometimes they will or won't. But most of these, they come with something in their medical history that dictates this. Thyroid is thyroid, done. It's like there's no argument. Someone else you did not determine that they have a thyroid issue. Okay? Now, sometimes you'll palpate the thyroid and you'll say, gee, I wonder, you're fatigued, you're depressed, you're losing hair, you have the official signs, and you might say, let me treat the thyroid and stuff. But usually that type will come because they have it's like they came, with a note from the doctor saying, they have this, please treat, kind of thing. Okay? I think that's the end of that. Yeah. All right.
Are you going to say losing hair with thyroid?
Yeah, or
What is
thin
this?
hair. That's a fairly common thyroid sign.
Would you put goiter in the category of cysts and fibroid?
Goiter is a thyroid issue, yes. The treatment is ever so slightly different, and a lot of goiters do not affect. So goiter would come into two categories conceivably. One is thyroid, the other one cysts. It's a growth.
Okay.
So it's liver. It's possibly a liver tissue also.
Just to let you know, 15 minutes to the first patient.
Okay, let's do a little bit of this and get 5-minute break.
Okay.
And because otherwise there won't be any. So, let me go for 5 minutes. So let's talk about this try thing because that's very primary for me. Okay. So this character, which means like to kick or to stomp. Okay. On the left-hand side, you have the foot. And then you have something above, which looks like it's to focus, which is worthwhile noting. But really, you see a mountain above and something like with claws going below. Okay, so you need something below and above. So, if I know many of you have done this, you may want to take your shoes off and stand up. Now, this is your heel. And this is your ankle bone, we're talking about inner ankle bone. And in between the two is called kidney 6, right? I want you to press the heel into the floor, but lift the ankle bone away from it. And you'll notice that the moment you want to lift the ankle bone away, you're going to want to roll onto the bladder channel. Don't. Keep spleen 3, or whatever, the bunion bone, on the floor. Send the heel down and lift the ankle bone up. Don't roll onto the bladder channel. keep your toes as loose as possible. Do you feel anything between your thighs?
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone not feel it? Okay. Bring that feeling, this now is mental, because you can keep pushing down stronger, it's not, it's still the mental, the thought pattern. Bring that sense of lift in between the thighs into the perineal floor. And then try and bring it up all the way up the spine. Don't use your neck to do this. Okay? I mean, there's a tendency to that. So relax everything, just the heel down, ankle bone up, the thighs are engaged, the inner thighs are engaged, up the perineal floor, up the rest of the spine. As far as it will go, it may go only up to the waist or the shoulder blades for some. It may go all the way up to here. Relax your eyes. You can't lift it with the eyes. Okay, let go. This is Chwai. Okay, it's very simple. You can sit down. Good. I just want you to get a sense of what it feels like in the body. Okay? Because the opposite is you just stand there and everything's falling and you're relying on your bones to just pick you up, you know, to support you. You know, it's not a very good way to stand. Okay? So, it's really important to assess whether a person has that or not, and it's very easy to assess. Like I said, you see them walking, and you'll be amazed how many patients, I don't use this, I use a yoga block, but this will do. You know, they're sitting there and saying, this hurts, this hurts, this hurts, and I say, okay, take the yoga block, and I won't squeeze because I can see that it's squeezable, but I ask them, sit on UB36. Don't sit on your buttocks, sit on your thighs and squeeze the block. How's your pain now? Oh, it's better. Okay. Once they engage the thighs, something else happens. They get a sense of their core. Okay, they naturally get a sense of the lower dantian, if you like, or whatever, however you like to call it. So the lower dantian is not, say, Ren 3 and Ren 4. The lower dantian starts between the legs. It's lower. It doesn't exist in your body in a way because it's between the legs. Okay, so it's a very useful trick, and then you kind of go, okay, they need to have a better sense of extension in their body. Okay, I think last year I showed you this thing also that, you know, the character to extend Sheng, which is like in UB62 Shen Mai. This is why the kidney 6, which is opposite. UB62 is not a great point for creating an extension in the body, unfortunately. I don't know why. But when you're looking at... Oops, sorry. Without this. This is to extend Shen. Okay? This looks just like center, except without this thing in the middle. This is center. This is not how this character was created. This character is actually created like this. Two things coming together, squeezing it to extend it. Except that then, okay, so the etymology of this character is not the same as the etymology for center, even though they look exactly the same with one. Okay? So to extend means to squeeze and lengthen, okay, from the sides, which is why I so often use, you know, mushu. Take Ren 4, go to the side. It's a point I use on lots and lots and lots of people. Okay, so let's see what the next. Okay, so I think we should take. Yeah, let's take a break. Let's try and come back in 5 minutes, although there's 10 minutes before the patient. Okay. So, and think about what you want for the rest of the class. You know, like I said, we can get 4 more patients if we can do a lot more patients or less patients and more theory, whatever you choose. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.